Welcome to Sniblet number 5. Last week we said one of the greatest ways to develop companionship, that's what we talked about, is to learn the art of communication. So you think about communication and how it affects, remember that scale of you got oneness on one side of the scale and then you've got isolation on the other. You're either moving towards oneness or you're moving towards isolation. There's really never a stagnant moment. And what we want to argue this morning is good communication is necessary if you want to move towards the target, which is oneness. So what is the goal, Julie, of communication?
That's a lofty question.
Yeah.
The goal of communication is to ultimately be able to share who you are with someone else. I think that takes a lot of vulnerability to do that.
Yeah.
James Cofield, we got to hear him speak one time, psychologist, a former professor, says this quote, "Vulnerability is the skin that intimacy lives on." So basically, you can't have intimacy without vulnerability.
Yeah. You know, when you talk about vulnerability, it's not so easy just to get there.
Yeah, not at all.
And so I think what we've heard over the years is that there's really levels of communication.
Right, I think so.
That before you get to. And so let's talk about 5 levels of communication.
Right.
What are they? First of all, let's identify them, and then let's talk about what are they.
Well, they kind of move in a progression. So I'd say the first one is cliche, fact, opinion, emotion, and then transparency.
Okay, so it's like a scale moving from lots of people, little vulnerability, to a few people, lots of vulnerability.
Right.
So let's go back, hopefully that's the target.
Right.
So let's talk about cliche. What does that mean?
Well,
What kind of
cliche
level of
is
sharing
really,
is that?
you could almost even call it non-sharing. It's just sort of mindless use of your words alongside of other people. Maybe think elevator talk.
Okay, yeah, that would be an example of cliche. So fact.
Well, that is
what's
sharing what you know, like your facts that you know.
Okay, give me an example.
I have a white car that gets 27 miles per gallon.
And I have a red car that does not get that good a gas mileage.
Those are facts.
Okay, yeah. And then we've got opinion. So tell me about opinion.
Next level, sharing what you think. Sharing what you think.
Give me an example.
Well, let's take a Saturday. I like a good Saturday with extra time, excess time, and a really good book to read.
Okay, that would be your opinion. My opinion would be if I had excess time on a Saturday, I would watch 12 hours of college football.
And these are just our opinions.
Right, just your opinion. There's not right or wrong, just different. And then let's talk about emotion.
Okay, so what you know, what you think, and now we're at sharing what you feel. So it's ratcheting it up a little bit.
A little bit more risky.
Right.
So give me an example of what you feel.
Thinking recently about the whole family coming for Thanksgiving, so I have a lot of different feelings about our whole family being at our house for a week at Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
That's an emotional level statement.
Yeah, and I feel hungry when I think about Thanksgiving. So then transparency.
Yeah.
So we've gone from
level.
what we know, what we think, what we feel.
And now transparency is sharing what we said earlier, who you are.
Okay.
It's that intentional bearing of your soul to another person. Your fears, your anxieties, your dreams, your hopes, your wishes, all of that stuff. And we don't do that with a whole lot of people.
Yeah.
We do that with just a few. And definitely.
Hopefully we do it with a few.
Right. And definitely it needs to be present with our soulmate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're going on kind of a cone-shaped scale, we start with cliche and the cone is open because we are coming in contact with a lot of people. But then as we move closer to transparency, it gets narrower and narrower.
Right.
Where do you think most relationships get bogged down in these levels of communication?
Well, I think it's pretty clear. Right there in the middle, you get stuck at opinion and emotion. And the reason why is you think about people sharing their opinions. Let's just take the context of marriage. People share different opinions, and people react with emotional responses. And in that process, you might see anger, you might see ridicule. You think, what? That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Or you feel shame. So as you take the risk to share your opinion, someone responds in the feeling level, and a lot of feelings can get hurt or miscommunicated.
Right.
And so I think people bog down is a good word, or stuck, and then sometimes I think people begin to even retreat in the other direction because it does not feel safe
Right.
to do
So
that.
if I'm sharing my opinion
Yeah,
and you shoot it down, why in the world would I want to share with you my emotion?
right,
Or then transparency, there's no way.
Right.
Because if you're shooting down my opinion,
right.
then I'm not going to risk
Right, getting there to,
vulnerability.
right. And you
Yeah.
know, that same author we mentioned earlier, James Cofield, says in his practice, he's a psychologist, author, former professor, he sees two components that are always present in what he considers a healthy relationship. And those are kindness and responsiveness. And so if you think about those two responses from people, that would really matter at that level
Yeah.
as you're moving down this, that you are kind in your responses back to one another, and that you actually do respond when someone shares an emotion that maybe brings tears to their eyes, or they're sharing a fear that they have, that you would respond to them in kind to them. So I just
Yeah.
think that's really interesting that he sees those two qualities.
You know, you think about, I think of in Romans where it talks about the kindness of God leads someone to
Right.
repentance. Well, I think that kindness is huge, because then I can risk
Right.
it if I know you're going to be kind with my emotions, if
Right.
you're going to be kind with my fears and desires.
And responsive as well, like it matters to me that that hurts you, or vice versa. And so
Yeah.
really responding to what's been shared
That's
will
good.
help us move down that scale
Yeah.
of communication.
I like it. Here's an application. You know, you may want to discuss with one another. What is it? Where are you landing a lot of times in these levels of communication? And then the point of application is what do you think is holding you back from going to a
the next
deeper
place.
level?
Yeah,
Might be a good discussion point. Well, what we've argued for is oneness can't happen if vulnerability is absent.
right.
And over the next couple of weeks, what we're going to do is we're going to continue to talk about the art of communication. So we'll see you next week.